Stone furniture is a category of finds that receive less attention from scholars in comparison with other categories of sculpture, such as statue and relief. Exceptions are those items that are more elaborate, like, for example, the figural table supports. I remind here the works of Theodosia Stefanidou Tiberio on table supports from Salonique, the dissertation of Christopher Moss, or the more recent work of Stefan Feuser on the monopodia from Asia Minor. For other types, the chapter on stone furniture from Donald's book on Delos is still the main reference, as it is also the handbook of Gisela Richter on ancient furniture. Another important contribution is the dissertation of Robert Cohon, who has the merit of gathering and analyzing an impressive amount of table supports in the form of slabs decorated with lion paws. Otherwise, this kind of finds were merely published in articles, collection, or museum guides, or just mentioned among other kinds of finds in volumes dedicated to a particular site. At Histria, the table supports were taken into account both in the volume on sculpture and in the one on architecture. However, since the moment of their publication, other finds came to light, and in addition, a review of the stone furniture reveals a much broader typology. The presentation is taught as a typological overview of the stone furniture from Histria. But I must stress from the beginning the fact that this is still an ongoing study, and therefore some of the finds will have a more detailed presentation than others, and also not all the conclusions have been drawn. The first type I start with is the straight leg decorated with furrows and leopold. One of the best preserved table supports has been discovered in 1963 in situ inside the Temple of Aphrodite, in front of the cult statue base from the north. Recently, it was restored with another fragment having a total height of 69 centimeters. This one. It is made of marble and belongs to the rectangular type decorated on the narrow side with furrows and leopold. The support was largely dated in the Hellenistic period, mainly based on the discovery context. That is the Hellenistic phase of the temple that ends around the middle of the 1st century BC. The recent mending of the two fragments has also revealed the decoration, a rinse of which grows a serrated acanthus leaf, a half palmet, and a spiraling tendril. A motif which is on the both sides. This is a bit enlarged, the motif on the other side. This lies under a horizontal molding, which does not continue on the whole length of the slab. Yeah. The horizontal molding corresponds to the crossbar that join the front and the back leg of the table with 4 legs that this type of support copies. And you have here marble support from a table with 4 legs, which was reproduced on the type of support or rectangular support of the table with 2 supports. And you can see here also both these 2 elements I'm speaking about, the horizontal molding and the bracket, this ornament above it. Here is the crossbar. You can see it here at a marble table with 4 legs, and it's correspondent on the other type of support that I'm speaking about. Here on 2 examples from Delos of Hellenistic period, the same, the crossbar, which is almost always, there are 2 elements that are always present. So this crossbar and this volute above it. Usually, this also reproduces the brackets, as I said, above the crossbar, a motif that reminds the shape of a wooden table upper joining. With few variations, crossbar and bracket are constantly reproduced on stone tables during the Hellenistic period. The lack of the brackets at our piece, our support here, shows a detachment from the wooden model and could suggest a later date. On the other hand, the vegetal motif under the crossbar looks like an early form of vegetal decoration. The chronology is assured in this case by the archaeological context. The table leg was part of the temple inventory of the Hellenistic period. From this inventory, relevant are the marble slabs decorated with garlands and bucharania belonging to the cult statue base. And I've illustrated here only the frontal slab with inscription of the cult base. This is the core of the base that you can see it here in Naos. And another which is relevant for our discussion is another find is the relief with the 3 moirai that also bears an inscription here. And both these inscriptions date from the first half of the 3rd century BC. Probably it was then that the temple received the most consistent furnishing. For this reason, and until other finds tell otherwise, it seems reasonable to consider the temple support as belonging to the temple from the beginning of the Hellenistic period. 2 other fragments belong to the same model. Not only are the dimensions and decoration similar, but so is the type of white marble with bluish veins. A small fragment which preserves 2 fingers with a well-articulated bone of lion paw on a circular print could belong to the second support of the table, this one. It was discovered in the excavation made east of the temple of Aphrodite. Another fragment, for which no data on the context of the discovery was preserved, represents the front upper corner of a rectangular support, this one here, similar to the one discovered in the temple of Aphrodite, with grooves and furrows on the narrow side and vegetal decoration under the crossbar. On one of the faces is incised the sign of the cross, an indication of the reconsecration of the table support in a Christian cult context. Such a consecration is documented, for example, at Tomis, where a support with a lion proton from the first half of the 3rd century AD is rededicated with a sign of the cross and an inscription in the 5th or 6th century AD. However, the lying position of the cross, as you can see, puts a question mark on the function of table support at the time of the rededication. More likely, it was reused in another monument, the functionality of which is difficult to guess. Although with a similar decoration to the previous support, it is not excluded that it belonged to another table of the same type. Belonging to the rectangular support type decorated with lion paw are 2 other fragments of white marble with bluish bands and volute decoration above the crossbar that probably belong to the same table. One preserved 4 channels, the other has a smooth, narrow side, yeah, and disc shape unfinished volute, which probably was not visible. The last most probably belong to the back part of the support. The closest analogy comes from Vergina, but has no secured chronology, being considered either Hellenistic or early Roman. However, a possible indication is given by the slightly trapezoidal shape of the slab noticeable in the angle made by the crossbar and the vertical furrow here. It's barely noticeable, which is comparable with the support from Cyzicus, dated between the middle of the middle of the 1st century BC. And here up you have some examples of thrones with such gold decoration. The second type of support attested at Histria is the lion leg shaped table support with vegetal decoration on the broad sides. An almost entirely preserved marble support was discovered at the beginning of the 20th century and shortly after reached Varna in the context of the First World War. The second support, so this one, of the same table was put together from 5 fragments that came to light in different campaigns during the excavation from the sacred area. On the interior side, the twisting start from the back of the lion paw upwards, and on the upper edge of the slabs form a spiraling huge tendril covering the central area. You can see it here. I'm talking about this. And other 2 stems with the flowers that go one in the upper back corners, the other in the lower relief field. The stars continue in an arch and ends in a torch-shaped half palmette oriented downwards. The design on the exterior side is composed of 2 stars. One comes out behind the leg in the upper corner and forms double volute tendrils here. The other springs from a serrated acanthus leaf behind the lion paw here and divides into 2 stems covering each corner of the backside, ending up in a double volute tendril, down in a half palmette and spiral tendril motif, other 2 spiraling tendrils intersecting in the middle. The Histian support was dated by different authors, either in the early Hellenistic, late Hellenistic, or early Roman period. A detailed analysis was made by the architect Monica Marcineanu, who also published a drawing of this exceptional find. In her opinion, the rendering of some elements of the vegetal composition, such as the closed eyelets of the acanthus leaves, the hypertrophy of the spiral tendrils, some of them crisscrossing each other, indicate a late date, possible late Hellenistic, or even early Roman. Nevertheless, the end of the century, around the middle of the 1st century BC, is considered a terminus antequem for the table support as well. The context of the discovery does not provide clarification regarding the relationship between the table support and the sanctuary. The largest fragment was discovered in a late Roman wall, and 3 other fragments in the filling of a well abandoned in the 6th century AD. You have on the plan of the excavation here, right, with a red rectangle, the area where this sondage excavation was made. At most, it can be said that the support was reused up to that date as building material. The slender acanthus leaves with turnout tips and ribbed eyelets can be found also in the decoration of table support from Pergamon from mid-2nd century BC, as well as on later supports, as the one illustrated on the right, table support from Metropolitan Museum in New York, late Hellenistic. Similar vegetal motifs can be noticed in the decoration of marble thrones, the twisted stalk Toropos, or large spiraling tendrils at Claros and Athens. Thrones also dated to the late Hellenistic or early Roman period. As Roman Cohon noted in his work on table sports with decorative relief, the chronology based on the stylistic analysis of the vegetal decoration is problematic, since the repertoire does not change much over time of this type of items. In addition, the stone tables have also large span of life, time span of life, often functioning for centuries before being taken out of use. The closest analogy comes from the Black Sea area. From the temple of Metertheon from Dionysopolis, you can see here the whole table with the two supports, the traversal slab, and the top of the table, which bears an inscription. Here it's not visible. The inscription dates the table in the first half of the 3rd century BC. And you can also notice here, for a later discussion, on the upper side of the top, several traces of embedding. I will refer to them later. And here is a picture of the exterior side of these supports. On each side, the twisting style comes out of an acanthus leaf situated in the back corner of the slab. On the exterior side, it goes diagonally towards the upper corner, ending in a half palmette. Out of each brach springs 3 spirally tendrils that cover most of the field. Here, you see. And while in smooth relief are rendered other smaller stems with half palmettes, buds, and rosettes. In both cases, at Histria and Dionysopolis, the stalk with double volute tendril is the dominant motif. And the rendering has a particular style, characterized by wide volutes with fluted tendrils that spin twice. By comparison, on the Histrian support, the tendrils are numerous and tightly rendered on the side, creating a heavier Baroque-like effect and suggesting a later date. Furthermore, the support from Dionysopolis is a straight leg, while at Histria it has the shape of a lion leg. The partially preserved type shows muscles covered by a web of thick veins. Here, you see, it's only few of them remain. A pattern common to some supports of Hellenistic and Roman period. And I have here 2 examples, one from Delos and a fragment from Pergamo. You can barely see these veins on the lion type, and here also. Also, the combination of the lion leg with an elaborated vegetal design on the broad sides relates the Histrian support to the Neo-Attic grotesque supports that were produced from the 2nd century BC onwards. And on the right side, you have 3 such drawings from 3 such examples. More light into the question brings a relief with 2 pairs of heraldically displayed panthers, lions, and lion griffins. This is this one here. The quality of its execution, remarkable in the accuracy of the rendering of animals' anatomical details, of the lion's mane or the griffin's plumage, made the first editors to assign it to the early Hellenistic period. The common opinion, and precisely the opinion of the architect, Monica Mărgineanu, is that the frieze, considering its small dimensions, its decorative character, and the lack of embedded elements, could only be part of some sort of furniture. One can definitely affirm now that the frieze with lions was the traversal slab of a marble table. Its sides, that measured 21 centimeter height and 7 centimeter thick, fits to the rectangular cavity of the inner face of the table support. And you can see here a detail because the support was not restored. So well, this is all I get. A similar slab, but decorated with dancing girls, can be seen at the table from Dionysopolis, you see here. Such richly decorated items of furniture can be found also among marble thrones. One from the Dionysos Theater in Athens bears a relief of up here. It's richly decorated with, among others, it's all over decorated. But you can notice here relief beneath the seat with a fight between Orientals and Sphinx. Two fragments of the relief with lions were discovered in the walls of an early Roman house, the bigger part of the relief. A Roman house situated south of the Aphrodite temple, which points to a date antequem of 50 BC. The above-mentioned analogies would suggest its creation in the 2nd century BC. An indirect indication is given by the general context of the Histrian century, which experienced a modest evolution, if not a crisis, towards the end of the Hellenistic period, expensive monuments being rather exceptional in this period. Furthermore, the slabs shows at both ends traces of reworking. You can see it best in the drawing, which indicate secondary use. Probably for to fit in another table support, which means that the support, this support that we are talking about, also already out of use well before the mid of the 1st century BC. In addition, it is worth mentioning also that some elements of the vegetal decoration were left unfinished. They are better finished on an inner side, as you can see here, than are on the outer side. And I refer to these eyelets, drilled eyelets that were not finished all. So if the smooth or faceted stems and the ungrooved stems could be a decorative variation, the partially executed ribs of the leaflets and the unfinished drilled eyelets clearly indicate a rush in the execution specific to, in my opinion, to cereal products. These details were probably easily overlooked, probably hidden by color. In fact, two other fragments could belong to tables of the same type. One from a similar frieze decorated with lions. This one here, you can see the back part of the lion with the spiraled tail. And another fragment from a support which still preserves part of the vein net of the lion's leg tight. You can see two such veins. So another category I will speak related to this are the lion leg shaped bench and footstool supports. Several such bench supports, these have maximal 50 centimeter height. They preserve only the upper part. One of them has, the first one here, has subtly carved muscle, and on each side a volute that starts from the leg hop upwards, ending in a leaf and spiral tendril. The second support has a wider volute, this one, that begins as a continuation of the arch edge of the leg and goes downwards with the same vegetable motif. The muscles are not naturalistic render. They are suggested by a network of undulating veins, symmetrically disposed for decorative purpose. Also noticeable are three protuberances that mark the area between tight ends and where the tight ends and the furrows begin here. These are two elements that are to be kept in mind. The same motif is found on a shorter support, 30 centimeters high, this one, which was probably part of a footstool, given its dimensions, a piece of furniture usually associated with thrones and couches. And you have on the right two examples, two details of such footstools. The motif of the muscles crossed by veins could be an indication of a furniture set, or simply of its popularity at Histria. The popularity of this motif is attested by the fact that it was reproduced also in limestone, local yellow limestone. Here, the other sport. This has, by comparison, elongated proportion and barely visible veins. Yes, it's clearly in the photos, you can hardly see them. Its side decoration consists of a simple thick arch framing the leg, probably copying a bronze model. Veins and protuberances are details common to the lion-shaped table support that I've just spoken about, which suggests a Hellenistic date for the bench supports as well. There is no data regarding the initial location of these benches. These were used in a variety of public contexts, theaters, gymnasia, agora, among which stands out, from these contexts, stands out those related to sanctuaries. One can only assume that the above-mentioned benches were part of the temple furniture. Such benches were discovered, for example, at Dionysopolis along the east and west walls of the naos. You can see on the right the plan of the temple from Dionysopolis, and down a view from the naos with the bench preserved in situ. And then another example I illustrate here is the top of a bench that with dedication to Apollo Delphinios from Odessos. Some of the supports decorated with lion paws were discovered at Histria in the sanctuary from the northeastern corner of the city. Moreover, both the discoveries in the Pontic area and beside the example from Dionysopolis, I choose to illustrate here another find known from Panticapaion, from the mount of Mithridates Mount. This is the restoration. It was preserved fragments from the lion paw and the table leaf with inscription. So beside these two examples from the Black Sea, but taking into account also other examples from the rest of the Greek world, this also show the use of the marble table initially and mainly in sanctuaries or in other cool settings from public spaces. Its adoption in the decoration of houses seems to be an Italic fashion. But even there, some opinions, and I cite here the opinion of Christopher Moss, emphasize the role of the stone table in domestic worship, while in the common opinion, these are mainly luxury furniture on which expensive vessels were displayed. A more flexible and situational functionality was recently proposed by Adrian Hilscher, who highlighted the fact that the two aspects are not excluding each other. Moreover, the custom of displaying religious vessels on such tables is also found in worship. For example, the cavities that I show you on the top of the table from Dionysopolis could have served for embedding objects such as images or cult vessels. Now, going further, I come to another type of proton decorated supports on lion legs. Preserved is a panther with grooved forehead, wide bulging eyes, and open mouth. Behind the head, there is a strap with a mortise for the insertion of the table leaf, this one. On the left side, a furrow corresponds to the S-shaped curvatures, this one, specific to this type of support, which continued with the lion's foot, as we see in several examples from Delos and Pompeii. But unlike this, the fragment from Histria does not present the fitting for the horizontal brace that join the three legs of the table. And you can see the brace here, for example. Therefore, one cannot tell if this function as mens attribes, it probably was a monopod. This analogy, as well as the rendering of the eyeball, suggests a date in the 1st century AD. The feline protom support types is known in the Plexiaria, Atomis, and Chersonesus through a series of monopodia from the Roman period. Two fragments of lion paws that were published as statue, these two ones, probably belong to the same type. The first is made of marble and preserves the front part of the lion paw, this one, characterized by fingers with a weakly articulated skeleton, but with a well-marked carnation in the folds of the skin and in the flat round pads of the claws. These details bring the fragment closer to the representation of robust lion griffins, which decorated both lion leg-shaped supports and those of the prototype. The massive appearance and the height pentagonal plinth are found in the three-leg table supports of the early Roman period. From Delos and Pompeii, you can see the basis and top. The second fragment in limestone presents undetailed fingers with voluminous pads and a short circular plinth, the closest analogy being the support from the late Roman period from Corinth. Belonging to the animal protom type is also a fragment that preserves a hoof decorated at the top with a row of small pointed leaves. You can see it better in the drawing. It continued with three channels and probably an acanthus leaf, out of which an animal protom came out, usually a water bird. This model, inspired by three-legged wooden tables, was reproduced in marbles, especially for monopodia, as illustrated by two well-preserved examples from Delos and Pompeii. At Delos, the body of a winged swan is joined to a hoofed leg, the figure having an additional support, a round pillar decorated with pointed leaves that resembled a water cane. At Pompeii, the hoofed leg was combined with a griffin body and attached to a pillar, both function as monopodia. In comparison, at the fragment from Histria, there is no gap between hoof and the back support. This was carved on the narrow side of a slab, also of a small slab. The two analogies suggest a date in the late Hellenistic or early Roman period. All these fragments are all discoveries with no preserved data about the archaeological context. However, the initial display and functionality is not difficult to imagine, since the proton type is a constant of the domestic furniture. A next type of supports decorated with dolphins. I'll start with both, with the exception with the smallest one, both are all discoveries. The one here on the lower left was published at Trapezophore and is described as a dolphin. The oval body, with the surface finished in irregular planes, is indeed closer to the anatomy of an animal than that of a vessel, for example. But the wavy band in relief, you can see this, the wavy band, which joins another groove below here, brings to mind the mouth of a large fish. The body overlaps an angled plinth and partially preserves the roughly worked support on the left side. The marking of the mouth and eyes would be sufficient for the stylization of a fish, but the eyes are difficult to identify among the irregularities of the body surface, and the detail was probably rendered by color. On the other hand, the function as part of a statue is unlikely, considering the fact that it is made out of limestone. And on the other hand, a representation is atypical for a table support. Much more common is the one in the shape of a dolphin, easily identified in the distinct marking of the eyes and the snout, always facing downwards, as we see in a series of supports from Asia Minor. The use of limestone indicates the product of a local workshop, and thus probably explains the choice of the unusual representation. In addition, another limestone fragment with the same motif of the wavy band in relief attests the existence of a second specimen of the same type. The image of a dolphin is certainly represented on the narrow side of a marble slab published as trapezophorus. And here you have also the drawing. The shape of the body and the eyes are well marked, but the correct position would rather indicate the lateral support of a throne, the dolphin being an ornament of the armrest, in which case some of the cavities on the two sides would correspond to the setting of the seat. The figural table support is represented at Histria by a single subject, an Eros leaning on a torch. All four supports present the same posture, with the left leg crisscrossed in front of the other leg, while the opposite right arm is bent on the chest, touching the left shoulder, towards which also the head inclines, and have the same pointed wings on the side, here and here. The only difference is the degree of detachment from the rectangular back support and of craftsmanship. The type is considered Attic and has analogies in several supports from Greece and Asia Minor. Three are illustrated here. Therefore, they have been assigned in the second half of the second century and in the 3rd century AD. The posture is often found in funerary art during this period. However, regarding the tables with this subject, no such relation was noticed. The leaning arrows has merely a decorative purpose. The relative high number of this type of support testifies for its popularity at Histria. And in the following, some words about several types that are still under study. One of it is the square, the rectangular simple support is until now less represented among the discoveries from Histria, probably because they have not been identified as such. Until now, these are the only two examples I could find. As I have mentioned at the beginning, the study of the stone furniture from Histria is not over. There are several categories are less studied. This is one of them. It should be said that this type of support was used mostly during late Hellenistic and Roman period. And here on the right, you have illustrated two examples from Delos and Pompeii, one preserving also the table. Another less studied group are the columnar supports. This is by far the best attested support type at Histria, judging after the numerous fragments from the local museum. Among these, I have illustrated here only two completely preserved supports, which have been also published. On the right, there are two completely preserved examples from Delos, with and without furs. This type of support is not only the most widespread, but has also a large time span, being attested from the Archaic until the late Roman period. Moreover, they could have been functioned also as vessel supports, and so they were considered the two supports illustrated here. A less known group of table supports have a columnar shape with evenly distributed teardrop-shaped protrusion characteristic to the club of Heracles. Two of them are made of limestone, the two on the right. These preserved details that sustain the identification as supports, namely the base, and an oval molding at the top with a circular cavity for the insertion of the table leaf. On one fragment, the teardrop-shaped knots have the appearance of an applied decoration, similar to a find from Delos. This one. And this is the analogy. And this analogy suggests a date in the late Hellenistic period for the fragment in Histria. By comparison, other fragments have a more naturalistic rendering and are related to several examples from Ostia and Pompeii. Other were found in the Plexi area at Olbia and Chersonesos. The one from Olbia being also the earliest. It was found in the pit with Hellenistic material from the central Temenos. And the other from Chersonesos, it was found reused in Christian basilica. Christopher Moss remarked a thematic connection between table design and wall painting. One of the supports that he published from the only one that has context from Pompeii was found in a house where the walls of the atrium and triclinium were decorated with scenes from Heracles' deeds. Obviously inspired from the imagery of Heracles, the design was probably related to cult in some cases. Such supports are known from the North Aegean and the Propontic regions, from Imbros, Çanakkale, and Tassos. At Histria, there is no data concerning their finding context. However, the relatively high number shows that these were common items of furniture. Question is if their use exceeded the realm of cult as it did at Pompeii. And finally, some words about tabletops. Considering the number of supports presented so far, the examples of tabletops or other parts that complete the furniture items that I have just presented are considerably fewer. The reason would be the difficulty of recognizing fragments that retain too few relevant features for their identification. Exceptions are several tabletops using Christian cult context. One of them, circular with concave profile, bears on the upper side also an inscription and a cross. It was found in the central basilica of the 5th century AD, where it functioned as an altar table. The same is assumed for the second tabletop, a semi-circular table with oval concavities, although this was found in a room of a residential house. Besides this, and because it is still an ongoing study, I will show here only some examples of circular and rectangular tabletops. Circular and one rectangular. These are made of marble and have different profiles, some presenting also traces of heavy use on the upper side. One particular fragment, inventory number 347 on the right, that I have considered some time ago an unfinished piece of sculpture, might be in fact a table leaf. This is a thin slab having on one side a superficial relief decoration with spirals. Several examples from Delos support such an identification. And you have here one full preserved and a drawing which is better, you can see better the decoration and a photograph and another fragment. Finally, remarkable are a series of rectangular tabletops with beveled edges and various decoration, vegetal or with Ionian chimatia. These were mounted on rectangular or columnar supports next to a wall, which provided extra stability to the table, as the examples on the right from Roman Britain show. I choose this illustration because it's the only article where I could find such a type of tabletops with decoration decorated on the edge. Some of these two here are of marble, but are also some of limestone, and that were most probably produced locally. The stone furniture, now for some conclusions, the stone furniture from Histria is represented by a relative high number of supports belonging to various types. Some of these finds attest the existence of at least 2 tables with the same decoration, therefore indicating a serial production. Most of the supports decorated with lion paw were discovered in the century from the northeastern corner of the city. The archaeological context is relevant also for the chronology of the straight leg as well as of the lion leg shaped support. The production of these tables, which has been described as an industrial art of the Roman period, is documented in Histria already from the Hellenistic period through several fragments, which attest the existence of at least 2 tables of the same type, but also of several benches with similar decoration. Other analogies show the use of the marble table with 2 lateral supports initially and mainly in sanctuaries. Its presence in the house decoration is probably in Italic fashion, yet unattested at Histria. The benches also were found in temples serving the same function as the table. However, the situation can only be assumed at Histria. Also, one can assume that the monopodia of the Roman period was probably part of the house setting. Worth mention are also the marble features, which that is white with bluish bands, large grain, semi-translucent, similar to that of Proconnesos. The importance of the Propontic area in the sculpture trade with the Black Sea is known for later periods, and it is possible that the beginnings of this relation in the import of marble craftsmen or finished products were much older. The models cover a wide area from Propontis to Asia Minor and Italic Peninsula, while the preference for certain models, but mostly their reproduction in limestone, indicate a local worship already in the Hellenistic period. Thank you for your attention.